Hey there, welcome back. I'm so glad you're here. Before we dive into today's story, I want to make a deal with you. In the next few minutes, you're going to hear a tale that might seem, at first, like a story about failure, about loss, about a path that led to a dead end. But I promise you, by the time we reach the final word, you will see it for what it truly is, a blueprint for a comeback. We all have that voice in our heads, don't we? The one that whispers, "You're too late, you're not talented enough, your best days are behind you." This story is the antidote to that voice. It's a story for anyone who has ever felt like they've missed their chance, for anyone who has ever been counted out, and for anyone who is standing at a crossroads, wondering if it's even worth taking the next step. So, put your phone down if you can. Get comfortable, close your eyes if you want. Let these words wash over you. Because this isn't just my story to tell. In a way, it's yours too. Let's begin. His name was Elias Vance, and by the age of 34, he had done everything right. Elias was an architect, not just any architect, but one of the brightest minds of his generation. He had graduated top of his class from a prestigious university. He had spent his 20s apprenticing under a master, working 18-hour days, sketching, drafting, and dreaming. His specialty was restoration, taking old, forgotten buildings and breathing new life into them. He saw beauty in decay, potential in ruins. For him, architecture wasn't about steel and glass, it was about stories. Every brick was a sentence, every archway a chapter. His crowning achievement came when he won an international competition to restore the historic Granville Opera House. It was a jewel of a building from the 1920s, a magnificent structure that had sat abandoned for 40 years. It was known locally as the Grand Lady of Elm Street. For Elias, this wasn't just a project, it was a calling. He poured every ounce of his soul into those blueprints. He envisioned a grand reopening that would revitalize the entire downtown district. He secured investors, hired a top-tier crew, and for 2 years he worked with a singular, burning focus. The night before the grand reopening was a crisp autumn evening. Elias stood on the sidewalk across the street, looking up at the Grand Lady. New lights beamed from her windows. The marquee, restored to its original Art Deco glory, glowed with gold lettering. It was perfect. It was his masterpiece. He felt a peace he had never known. He pulled out his phone to call his mother, to tell her that all the sacrifices, the missed birthdays, the canceled vacations, the relationships that had withered under the weight of his ambition had all been worth it. He never made the call. He was woken at 3:17 a.m. by the frantic buzzing of his phone. It was the foreman. Elias answered, his voice thick with sleep. Elias, the foreman's voice was a sharp, jagged whisper. "There's a fire." By the time Elias arrived, the sky was orange. The air was thick with smoke and a terrifying, deep roar. He pushed through the crowd, past the fire trucks with their ladders stretched impossibly high, and saw his dream collapsing in on itself. The fire had started in the basement, in the old electrical system. They said it was a short circuit, a spark that found a century's worth of dry timber and dust. By the time the first alarm sounded, the flames were already in the walls, racing upward like a silent, hungry beast. Elias watched, his face pale, as the roof of the Grand Lady caved in with a deafening groan. A shower of golden sparks erupted into the night sky, beautiful and devastating. The marquee he had so lovingly restored, the letters spelling out grand reopening, buckled and fell to the sidewalk with a crash that he felt in his bones. In one night, his masterpiece was reduced to a smoldering skeleton of blackened steel and ash. The days that followed were a blur of insurance adjusters, newspaper headlines, and sympathetic but hollow words. At least no one was hurt, they said. It was insured, they said. But they didn't understand. It wasn't just a building. It was his legacy. It was the proof he had been trying to show the world and himself that his life had meaning. The investigation cleared him of any wrongdoing, but the court of public opinion was harsher. Whispers began. Did he cut corners? Did he ignore the old wiring? Was he in over his head? The whispers didn't matter. What mattered was that he started to believe them. Elias became a ghost. He moved into a small, dark apartment. He stopped answering calls. The sketches that had once flowed from his pen with effortless grace now remained trapped in his mind, formless and gray. His reputation, built over a decade, crumbled faster than the opera house had. The invitations to speak, the offers for new projects, they all dried up. He was no longer the visionary architect, he was the man who watched his building burn. One afternoon, 6 months after the fire, he hit a new kind of bottom. He was cleaning out his car, a pathetic attempt to exert some control over his life, when he found a forgotten blueprint tube in the trunk. He unrolled it. It was his original concept drawing for the Granville Opera House, the one he had done in a fever of inspiration on a napkin in a coffee shop, before the investors, before the contracts, before the pressure. It was messy, full of crossed-out lines and notes in the margins, but looking at it now, he saw the hope in it, the raw, unbridled belief. A wave of rage surged through him. He grabbed the blueprint, crumpled it into a tight ball, and threw it as hard as he could against the wall of the parking garage. It bounced off and landed in a dirty puddle. He stared at it for a long time. The ball of paper, once a dream, now lay soaked and disintegrating. And in that moment, the rage dissolved into something else, something far heavier, grief. He sat down on the cold concrete, his back against his car, and wept. He wept for the grand lady. He wept for his younger self, the one with the napkin sketch. He wept for the years he felt he had wasted. He cried until there was nothing left. And in that emptiness, a strange thing happened. A thought, quiet and unbidden, floated to the surface of his mind. It wasn't a grand, motivational slogan. It was just a simple observation. Asterisk, you have drawn 1,000 buildings in your life, but you have never tried to draw one from memory. You have never tried to draw one that no longer exists. Asterisk. He sat there for another hour, just letting that thought sit with him. Then he slowly got up, walked over to the crumpled, wet blueprint, and picked it up. He smoothed it out as best he could on the hood of his car. The ink was smeared, the paper was ruined, but the lines were still there, faint but there. He didn't go home that night. He went to an all-night diner, ordered a cup of coffee, and pulled out a small sketchbook he always carried. For the first time in 6 months, he put pen to paper. But he didn't draw something new. He closed his eyes and pictured the Granville Opera House as it had been, not the restored version. The original one, the grand lady in her prime. He remembered the fire, but he forced himself to remember the life before the fire. He started to draw. He drew the lobby with its terrazzo floors. He drew the grand staircase that had led to the balcony. He drew the chandelier that had shattered in the heat. He drew the stage where vaudeville performers had once danced. He drew for hours, his hand cramping, his mind flooded with images he thought the fire had erased. When the sun came up, he had filled a dozen pages. It wasn't a blueprint. It was a memorial. But it was something. This became his ritual. Every morning, he would go to the diner, order his coffee, and draw. He drew the grand lady from every angle, every detail he could recall. He drew the dressing rooms, the ticket booth, the alley behind the stage. He started to interview old-timers in the city, people who had seen shows there as children. He'd listen to their stories, then go home and draw what they described. The project was no longer about a future building. It was about preserving a past one. He called the series Ashes. It was a private act of remembrance. He didn't post the drawings online. He didn't show anyone. They were for him. They were his way of saying, you existed. You mattered. I will not let you be forgotten. This went on for a year. He lived frugally on the insurance settlement money, his world shrinking to the diner, his apartment, and the library where he researched the opera house's history. He was off the grid. To the world, Elias Vance had disappeared. One day, a woman named Clara found him. Clara was a librarian who had helped him with his research. She was a quiet, observant woman in her 60s with kind eyes that missed nothing. She found him in his usual booth at the diner, surrounded by sketchbooks. Elias, she said, sitting down across from him without asking, I need to show you something. She placed a faded photograph on the table. It was a picture of the Granville Opera House, but not the one he knew. In the photo, the building was a shell. The windows were blown out, the facade was scarred. The date on the back read 1946. "What is this?" he asked. After the war, Clara said, there was a small fire, a grease fire in the backstage kitchen. It wasn't as big as the one you had, but it gutted the backstage area. For 2 years, the city said it was a total loss. They were going to tear it down, just like they are now. Elias felt a chill run down his spine. They are tearing it down? Clara nodded. The city council voted last night. The site is to be cleared for a parking structure. The demolition starts in 60 days. He stared at the photograph. The grand lady, once again reduced to ruin. But in this picture, she was standing. Damaged but standing. And the caption on the back, written in elegant cursive handwriting, said, asterisk repaired by the people. Reopened 1948. The lady never gives up. Asterisk. His eyes lingered on that last sentence. Asterisk, the lady never gives up. Asterisk. He looked at Clara. Who repaired it? The community, she said. The theater-goers, the shopkeepers, the families who lived on Elm Street. They didn't have an architect for a year. They had a vision. They raised the money $1 at a time. They laid the bricks themselves on weekends. They refused to let it become a parking lot. Elias looked down at his sketchbooks piled high on the table. For the last year he had been drawing a ghost. He had been mourning. He had been so focused on what was lost that he had forgotten the most important part of the grand lady's story. She was never about the building. She was about the people who believed in her. For the first time in 18 months he felt a spark. It was the raging, ambitious flame that had driven him before. It was a small, steady ember. The kind you nurture in the palm of your hand. He looked at Clara. 60 days, he said. She smiled. That's what I came to tell you. That night, Elias didn't go to the diner. For the first time in a year, he sat at his desk in his dark apartment. He took out a fresh piece of tracing paper, and then he took out all of his Ashes sketches. He laid them out on the floor. The lobby, the grand staircase, the stage, the balcony, the dressing rooms, the ticket booth. A year's worth of memories all laid out before him like a map. He didn't draw the old building. He started to draw a new one. A building that incorporated the original bones that had survived the fire, the outer brick walls, the foundation, the steel frame of the stage. But inside, he drew something new. He used the memories, the stories people had told him, not as a blueprint to replicate, but as a foundation to build upon. He designed a performance space for a new generation. He added a community arts wing. He designed a small museum in the lobby to tell the story of the Grand Lady, including both fires. He worked through the night, and then the next night, and the next. He didn't sleep. He didn't eat. He just drew. The ember in his chest grew warmer. He wasn't doing this for his reputation. He wasn't doing this for a prize or a headline. He was doing it for the Grand Lady. He was doing it for Clara. He was doing it for the people who had laid those bricks in 1948. On the 10th day, he walked into the city council chambers. He was unshaven, his clothes were wrinkled, and he carried a large leather portfolio under his arm. The council members, who were in the middle of finalizing the demolition contract, looked up in surprise. The last time they had seen Elias Vance, he was a broken man on the front page of the newspaper. Mr. Vance, the mayor said, her voice cautious. This is a closed session. I know, Elias said. His voice was hoarse from days of silence, but it was steady. I'm not here to stop the demolition. A murmur went through the room. He walked to the center of the chamber and placed the portfolio on the table. He opened it. Inside were not just his new blueprints, but also the Ashes sketches, the old photograph from 1946, and a petition Clara had helped him gather signed by over 3,000 residents. The Grand Lady was built by the people of this city, Elias said. When she was damaged in 46, they repaired her. Now, she's damaged again. You have the right to tear her down. But I'm here to ask you to give the people the chance to repair her again. He spent the next hour presenting his plan. He wasn't the arrogant, polished architect from before. He was a man who had sat in the ashes of his failure and had found something more valuable than a perfect blueprint. He had found the reason he started drawing in the first place. He spoke not about steel stress loads or HVAC systems, but about memories, about a young couple's first date at a show there in the 1950s, about a child who saw their first magic show on that stage, about the smell of popcorn and the creak of the floorboards. When he finished, the chamber was silent. The mayor looked at the pile of sketches, at the petition, and then at Elias. "The demolition is scheduled to start in 4 to 5 days, she said. "If you can raise the funds and present a viable plan to the Historic Preservation Committee in 30 days, we will postpone the vote." 30 days. It was an impossible deadline, but Elias had spent the last year learning how to do impossible things. He started with small steps. He didn't try to raise millions of dollars all at once. He went to the local newspaper and asked them to publish his ashes sketches, one a day, for 30 days. Each sketch came with a story: the story of the chandelier, the story of the dressing rooms, the story of the stage. The public response was immediate. People started sending in their own memories, their own photos. The newspaper's website traffic tripled. He set up a donation page, but instead of asking for large corporate donations, he asked for small contributions. "Buy a brick for the Grand Lady," the campaign said. $5. The same price it was in 1948. The donations trickled in at first. Then they became a stream, then a river. Local businesses offered to match donations. A retired construction crew, the sons and daughters of the original 1948 volunteers, offered their labor. An anonymous donor later revealed to be a wealthy philanthropist who had seen his first Broadway show at the Grand Lady as a child, offered to cover the cost of the new steel framework. On the 30th day, Elias walked back into the city council chambers. This time he wasn't alone. He was followed by Clara, by the retired construction crew, by a group of schoolchildren holding handmade signs that read "Save the Lady," and by hundreds of residents who packed the gallery. He presented the council with a check that represented over 4,000 individual donations, along with a viable construction plan. The council voted unanimously to reverse the demolition order and to grant Elias the contract for the restoration. It took 2 years. But this time, it was different. Elias was not the sole visionary, standing apart from his creation. He was on the site every day, working alongside the volunteers. He was there when they unearthed the original terrazzo floor, miraculously intact under 6 inches of ash and concrete. He was there when they hoisted the new steel beams into place, a modern skeleton within the old stone walls. He was there when a team of local artists, inspired by his ashes sketches, painted a mural on the backstage wall depicting the Grand Lady rising from the flames not once, but twice. On the night of the second grand reopening, Elias stood across the street once again, but this time he wasn't alone. Clara stood beside him. So did the foreman from the first fire. So did the schoolchildren, now 2 years older, holding their parents' hands. The new marquee, a faithful replica of the original, glowed with gold lettering. But this time, the words didn't say "Grand Reopening." They said, "The Lady Never Gives Up. Welcome Home." The doors opened. A crowd of people, young and old, streamed inside. Elias heard the first notes of a local jazz band echo from within. He felt Clara's hand slip into his. He didn't feel the need to call his mother this time. He understood, finally, that this was never his masterpiece. The Grand Lady belonged to the city. His masterpiece was not a building. It was the decision, in a parking garage, to pick up the crumpled blueprint. It was the small, daily choice to draw one memory at a time. It was the courage to start over, not by pretending the fire never happened, but by carrying its lessons with him. He had learned that motivation isn't a lightning bolt that strikes you. It's a muscle you rebuild, one rep at a time. It's the choice to get up, even when everything you built has turned to ash. It's the understanding that failure isn't the opposite of success, it's the foundation upon which real success is built. The fire didn't end his story. It burned away the ego, the need for external validation, and left him with only what truly mattered, the work itself, and the community to share it with. So, here's the question I want to leave you with. What's the grand lady in your life? What's the dream you've let turn to ashes because of a failure, a setback, or a voice that told you it was too late? What would happen if you stopped looking at the ruins and started looking at the foundation? What would happen if you started with just one small sketch, one phone call, one step? Elias's story isn't about architecture. It's about resurrection. It's about understanding that your story isn't over until you decide it is. The fire will come. It comes for everyone. But it doesn't have to be the end. It can be the beginning of something you never could have built without it. If this story touched you today, if it sparked that little ember in your chest, then I have a small favor to ask. Don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone you know who's going through their own fire. Send them this video. Text it to a friend who's given up on their dream. Be the Clara in their story, the one who shows up with a photograph and a reminder that they never give up. And if you believe in the power of starting over, in the beauty of rising from the ashes, then please hit that like button. It tells me that stories like this matter to you. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell, because I have so many more stories to share with you, stories of comebacks, of second chances, of people who refused to let their fire be the final word. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Now go find your blueprint and start drawing.